The alarms shrieked through the hospital corridors as if the walls themselves were crying out for help, and in the center of the chaos lay a small girl whose breaths were fading like the last flicker of a candle in a storm. Nurses sprinted, doctors shouted orders, and monitors flashed red warnings. Everyone tried, yet everyone failed. The CEO's only daughter, fragile and pale, was slipping away faster than her father could whisper her name. And just when despair tightened its grip around the room, a tired, worn-out single dad stepped forward with a courage no one expected, offering the one thing he barely had to spare, his own blood, his own life, his own hope. What followed wasn't just medical, it was a miracle shaped by love, sacrifice, and a father's heart stronger than fate itself. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of a good heart, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. It helps the story reach more beautiful souls like you. Frank Dawson never imagined he would one day be the man running down hospital halls with a donor form in his hand. He was simply a mechanic, a single father working double shifts just to keep the lights on and his little boy fed. But life had a way of leading him into storms he never asked for. That night, he brought his feverish son, Ethan, to the emergency room, praying he'd simply need medicine and rest. But as he waited outside the pediatric ward, he overheard the frantic whispers of nurses discussing a little girl named Lily, the daughter of one of the most powerful CEOs in the city, whose rare blood condition had suddenly spiraled out of control. She needed an immediate transfusion, but no match could be found. Donors were being checked one after another, but the screens kept flashing red. The family was running out of time, and everyone knew it. Frank tried to ignore it. He had his own child to worry about. But there was something in the way the nurses spoke, a trembling mixture of urgency and heartbreak, that hit him like a memory. He remembered the night his wife died after childbirth, how he stood helpless in another hospital, begging the world to give him one more second with her. He remembered the emptiness that followed, the loneliness of raising a newborn while carrying grief like a stone. Maybe that was why he couldn't walk away. Maybe that was why he found himself stepping toward the nurse's station, asking if he could be tested, even though he had never even met the child. When they pricked his arm and his blood sample went through the machine, he didn't expect anything. He had nothing in common with a billionaire's daughter. But when the screen finally flashed green, the room froze. Frank Dawson, an ordinary, struggling single father, was the one rare match they needed. Within minutes, they prepped him for an emergency transfusion. He wanted to call someone, to at least let Ethan know where he had gone, but there was no one to call. It was just him, lying alone under blinding white lights, consciously giving something that could leave him weak for weeks. But he didn't hesitate. He told himself that if he could keep another child from feeling the emptiness his own son had felt, then it was worth every drop. On the other side of the hospital, Alexander Harrington, the iron-willed CEO whose decisions could move markets, sat crumpled in a chair like a broken man. He had built empires, negotiated wars between companies, and stood tall against every storm life had thrown at him. But nothing had prepared him for watching his daughter fade in front of him. Lily had been his world since her mother died, and losing her now would destroy whatever pieces of him remained. When he was told that a stranger had agreed to donate blood, he could barely comprehend it. Why would someone sacrifice for a child they didn't know? Why would a man with no connection to him or his wealth step into danger for someone else's daughter? He waited outside the operating room, hands trembling, hoping the stranger who was saving his child would survive the strain. Hours felt like years. Frank felt his consciousness drifting as the machines pulled his life essence out of him. But he refused to stop, even when the nurse warned him he had given enough. He insisted they take what they needed, not what he could spare. And somewhere between waking and fading, he thought about Ethan, how he would grow up remembering that his father wasn't rich, wasn't powerful, but he was someone who tried to make the world less cruel. When the doctors finally rushed the blood into Lily's veins, the room felt like it held its breath. Her pulse was faint, her skin icy, her future uncertain. But slowly, subtly, as if pulled back by something gentle, the monitors began to stabilize. Her heart regained rhythm. Her small fingers twitched. And for the first time that night, hope entered the room like sunlight slipping through storm clouds. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't guaranteed, but she was fighting again. She was alive because a man with nothing to give had given everything. Frank woke hours later in a dimly lit recovery room, his body heavy, his vision blurred. His first thought was Ethan, and panic jolted through him until a nurse reassured him his son was sleeping safely in the pediatric ward. Then she told him the news: Lily was stable, recovering, and expected to live. Frank didn't know how to react. He simply sank into the pillow, letting quiet relief wash through him. He didn't think anyone would thank him or even remember him. He didn't do it for recognition, only for the chance to keep another parent from suffering the same heartbreak he had known too well. But Alexander Harrington was not a man who forgot. He insisted on seeing Frank, entering the room with a mixture of awe, confusion, and gratitude so deep it redefined who he was. He expected a hero. Instead, he found a weary man in cheap clothes, with dark circles under his eyes and calloused hands. A man who looked like life had been chewing on him for years. Yet Frank had done what hundreds of wealthy, healthy donors could not: he had saved Lily's life. In that moment, the CEO realized something money had never taught him: true generosity doesn't come from overflowing pockets, but from overflowing hearts. In the days that followed, Alexander learned more about the man who saved his daughter. He learned about Frank's dead wife, his struggle to raise Ethan alone, his endless overtime shifts, and the bills he couldn't quite afford. He learned how Frank often went without so his son wouldn't have to. It broke him in a way he didn't expect. And while Frank recovered quietly, trying to slip out of the hospital without ceremony, Alexander stopped him at the exit, not with grand speeches or emotional displays, but with a simple promise that would change everything. He told Frank that what he had done could never be repaid, but he would try anyway. He covered Ethan's medical expenses, gave Frank a job at his company far above anything he had dreamed of, and ensured they would never struggle again. Frank resisted at first, but Alexander made it clear: this wasn't charity. It was gratitude, respect, and the beginning of something their broken families needed. Over time, Lily and Ethan became inseparable, their bond forged by shared miracles rather than blood. Alexander and Frank, two fathers from completely different worlds, found themselves united by the soft, healing power of love born from tragedy. If this story touched your heart, please like,